Anyone who thinks their home is an asset are greatly mistaken. It is actually a liability. So who owns this real estate? The government owns the real estate. So today, I'm going to talk about real estate because I had to do a questions and answers. I wanted to pick a subject that I'm most comfortable with, and that's real estate. So why real estate? Well, real estate is all around. We all need a place to live. We need a place to work and a place to shop as well. And obviously we're in real estate right now. Let's face it, we're very territorial about our real estate. There's been lots of wars in the past, all fighting over a little piece of land. So who owns this real estate? I know a lot of people, they have a mortgage on the house and they say, oh, the bank owns my house. And then when they pay it off, they say, I own this house. I have my own house. It's my real estate. When in actual fact, it's not. The government owns the real estate. And if you don't believe me, don't pay your property taxes and see how long you can keep hold of it. So if the government owns this land, why do we buy real estate? Well, you're not actually buying the real estate. You're actually buying the title for that real estate. So you can do, I'm going to say, whatever you like with that land, but actually you can do whatever you want as long as you keep within the bylaws, the boundaries, and within the restrictions of what you can do on that land as well. So I'd like you to think real estate more of temporary rather than permanent. Everybody buys their forever home, I'm going to live here forever, and there's no such thing. Eventually you will move out, and your final resting place will be in that cemetery, and you think that I'll be there forever. But in fact, that's still on government land. And if they want to develop that land, you will be pulled up and you will be moved. So with knowing this, that everybody moves, then we know that we can keep moving real estate because that's what it's all about. It's all about keeping it moving around. So we'll start when we going into the housing market, let's say. We'll start single, then we become a couple, so then you need to get a bigger place. Children come along or pets, so we keep expanding a little bit bigger as well. And every time we get bigger, obviously we need to change that type of real estate as it comes along. And then we get to a point where you need to downsize again. We get to a point where children leave, we got the empty nest. And also other things come along as well, where maybe changing locations, jobs, or maybe illnesses. You can't do stairs anymore. So then you're going to move to a different type of home as well. So real estate keeps moving. I know a lot of people benefit from this. And some would say it's better to rent than it is to actually buy a property. And why would they say this? Well, one school of thought is if you're renting a place, then the money you would have put down as a down deposit on a place, you can use that money to invest in other things and grow that money as well. So there's no sure thing that if you buy a real estate and you're going to live there all the time, then that's the only way you can make money. You can make just as much money as if you're renting a home. It's not wasted money. I know a lot of people say rent is you just throwing your money away. It's not if you're taking care of yourself. But not everybody does that, or the school of thought. And anyone who thinks their home is an asset are greatly mistaken. It is actually a liability. An asset means that the asset is putting money into your account. Where with a liability, the money is going the other way. And your home only becomes an asset once. And that's when you sell it and your money comes back out of the property. So it's just one thing we need to think about. So if real estate is temporary, why do we invest in real estate? It's because we got to keep that money moving. Because if money doesn't move, nobody makes any money on it. Banks need the money to keep flowing through because there's a central banking system. So if somebody puts some money into the bank, and then somebody comes along and borrows that money. When they borrow that money, they're actually going to purchase something with it, and then it goes back into the banking system. So the person's savings is still within the banking system. It's just how they flow the money around. But if they don't flow it around, nobody makes any money because they don't make money on the interest. It works. And a lot of people are always unsure about the bank as well, or banks don't want to give me money for real estate. Banks love to lend on real estate. It's the most favorite asset for them because historically, real estate has always gone up in value. Maybe we get the little market dips, but if you look over a graph, it always goes up. And if you were to go into a bank with a piece of real estate and say, I want to borrow some money on this real estate, they'd be glad to. Obviously, they want to make sure that it is valued at that. You have some skin in the game, and they'll lend you the rest. So they're always in the more strongest position. But if you went into the bank and said, I'd like to borrow some money to buy some stocks, they would not lend you the money. Even if you are buying stocks in that bank, they would still not lend you the money for that. You would actually have to cover the loan in another asset as well to protect that, because they don't even trust their own stocks. So knowing these basic rules, how can you make money on real estate? Well, one, because people are always moving, and two, there's lots of different ways on how people do make money in real estate by trading it. So I'm going to go through a list of different trades, if you will, in real estate. So I'm not sure if you've heard of any of these, or all of them, or some of them. So bird dogs is what we call right at the bottom, the starting point. And what a bird dog is, he's the person that would go out and find properties for sale, and then they produce a list, and then they would pass that on to investors who want to go out and check these properties out. It's basically just a list of available sellers. And then next up from that is wholesalers. Now, wholesalers, what they do the negotiation and secure the property, whatever value it is, and then they pass that on to a different investor, and they make money by getting the asset under contract and then reassigning that contract. So they never actually own any of the real estate. They just own a contract for the sale and purchase of that real estate. And to be very upfront, wholesaling is illegal in North America, because if you are trading in real estate, you need to have a license for that. So what a lot of wholesalers do, they charge an assignment fee, which is a bit of a wording and a workaround until they close that gap as well. So you're not actually being paid for trading in real estate. You're just being paid an assignment fee after the trade is completed. And then who buys these properties? Well, a lot of people buy them for house flipping. They can do, they buy a property and they want to fix it up, and then they want to sell it on again. So they could get their properties from bird dogs, or they could get it from wholesalers, or they could just go out and find these properties themselves. And we've all heard of house flipping if you've watched the TV shows. If anyone's actually done house flipping, it's not like the TV shows, apart from when they find disasters when they open walls and lift floors. That is very much like house flipping. And then you have, moving on from that, a lot of people want to do buy and holds, where they all want to be their own landlord, where they buy a little single family home and they plan to do their retirement on this property or one of them. So when I said about, is it better to rent or is it better to buy? Well, some people believe you should rent where you live and actually own where you rent out. So therefore you're maximizing the investment, but you're also keeping fluid renting. Because obviously every time people move, it costs them money. And when you're redoing a mortgage, every time you move, your mortgage payments start again. So the interest that you paid for the first 7 years, which is mainly interest, then you're starting again as well. There's a lot of costs involved with keep moving houses. And then we have a little bit of an in-between from the flipping and the buy and hold, which is called rent to own. So a lot of people, they do a lease agreement with someone who wants to rent, but they can't afford to buy a home. So therefore you can rent them a home and also charge them an extra fee that would go as a down deposit to buy this property in 3 years, when they could have maybe fixed the credit rating and also they would have some money as a down deposit for it. I do know people who do rent-to-owns, and there's a lot of people who don't, most people don't do them correctly. They never set up the person buying the rent-to-owns up for success. When you actually do the numbers, when they reach the 3 and 5 year point, they don't have enough money in their down deposit to continue with that. And as the contract is, just like any mortgage, you've defaulted on it, and therefore you lose anything you put into the property, which is, I don't think is fair on the people trying to get on the housing market. But then there's a very good way of getting onto the housing market if you're struggling with the mortgage payments. It's called house hacking. So you can get maybe a duplex or threeplex or fourplex where you live in one of the units and you rent out the other units to help subsidize your mortgage. So if you do it correctly, maybe you can live without actually having any mortgage payments yourself. And then another way of investing is actually in trailer parks. There's money in land, like we said, in real estate. So you're renting out these lots of lands to people who live on trailer parks. So that is a way of investing. And then on a very similar stage to that is RV parks, where it's just a trailer park, but it's seasonal and you have a lot more coming and going. This is more in the hostility side of things. And storage units is another way of a buy and hold, where you may just have a unit and you're going to rent the space out to people there as well. And then we move on to commercial units. We've all seen the strip malls where you have a different business in each one, which is just another way of renting space out. And then we have short-term rentals. And this is, we've all heard of Airbnb. It's a great website to help people rent out a space or to try and get in the hospitality area of things. And then on the next scale of that is hotels, where you can buy a hotel and do the same thing, where you're renting out a room per day as well. And then there's my niche, which is apartment buildings. And because I've hit my time, I'm going to skip through that. Because I'm going to get to questions and answers at some point, so you can ask me about that, I guess. So most people believe, that they can't invest in real estate because they don't have the time, the money, the knowledge, the network, or the opportunities. But time, if you ever say you don't have the time, you want to replace that word with, it's not my highest priority. People say I don't have time for the gym, but if you say it's not my highest priority, you're being more honest. So with money as well, you can always use somebody else's money. Don't necessarily always have to use your own money. Knowledge, well, that's part of, I guess you're learning some knowledge today. And it's just like any trade or anything else you want to learn. You go to people who know and do it before. Network, there's lots of networking groups you can do for anything to network with like-minded people or different trades or industries. And opportunities are always there, you just have to look for them. It's a bit like, it's called the red car syndrome. If you don't really notice any red cars, and then you buy a red car, and then you start to see all these red cars away, and that's what they call red car syndrome. Is when you start looking for opportunities in something, then that's when you start to see these opportunities. So to do a quick wrap up of what I've spoken about here is I spoke about real estate and why to rent rather than owning, different types of real estate. I was going to talk about why I love apartment buildings, but I was running out of time there, and a quick basic on how people make money in real estate. So now I'm going to open it up to any questions. So has anybody got any questions about anything on real estate? I'd like you to try and stump me if you can. Jackie, please go ahead.
We are a Commonwealth country. You started speaking at the beginning about how government also owns the land that you think you own. What's happening down in Australia? I heard that some of their government is starting to move in more with the ownership of said homes.
So you're asking, what do I know about Australia and the government moving in on real estate?
Yeah.
I don't know anything about what's going on in Australia in real estate, because obviously we're in Canada and I know that, but I do know that if the government needs a piece of property, we're in Brandon. We rebuilt the bridge going over 18th Street. There was homes there that were purchased by the government because the road needed to go through there. And people in those homes were made an offer for the homes, and it was way above what you would if you were selling them because they are compensated to move elsewhere. I believe if you refuse, then it goes to the next stage of courts and it can be forced because it is for the public and the more people. Yeah. I do know one person who still loved his home and he got paid out and he was able to take the home. So he bought somewhere else and he put a basement in or a foundation and he moved the home onto that. So he still kept his home and he was very happy with the result because he has his home, he has a new spot and he had money in the bank. Thank you for the question. Go ahead.
Can you tell me about getting investors and sort of describe that a little bit?
Okay, so the question is, how do I get investors? Or how would you get investors?
How you do.
So how I get investors?
Yeah.
So I changed my mindset. If a piece of real estate came along, I'd say, I can't afford to buy that real estate. Now it's a little bit different. First I look at where's the location? Do I want to buy that piece of real estate? And then I look at the numbers. Does an actual property make money? Because we buy apartment buildings and rentals. And then once I know the numbers work, that it can afford to make money and I can afford to pay investors, then I always say, yes, I'll buy the property. And at that stage, obviously, I don't know how I can buy this property. I just know that I'm going to buy it. And then that's when we have investors, and that's when we can approach investors that we know in our network. And what we're looking for is giving those investors a better return on their money than what they're getting traditionally. So maybe they got money in the bank and the bank's only giving a 2% on the savings, when we can give them a better rate of return on their money. So it's approaching that way. Some people have RSPs, which is your retirement savings account, and they're in mutual funds and they're only getting a certain return as well. And we can use that money as well to invest in the real estate and give them a better return on the money. So it's just kind of talking to people, building a relationship and finding out what investments they're looking for and then seeing if we can match that up.
Do you have to actually go out and talk to people to find those investors, or do you sort of look for a certain characteristic in a person?
No, it's people that we know. Because people will only do business with you if they like, know, and trust you. So you are not allowed to advertise public on Facebook. I cannot put on Facebook and say, hey, I've got this investment, these are the returns can do, because securities will come down on you, because that is illegal. We are not an investment group, but people that know you, that can invest money with you. And we make sure they are secured on title. We always make sure the money goes through the lawyers, so everything is legal and above board, because there's no big bags of cash being dropped off or anything like that. It has to go through the lawyer. We always make sure they're documented, where they have security, whether it's a promissory note or whether it's registered on title. Yeah. So that helps secure the investor's mind as well, because that's what investors want to know. How secure is my money? What am I making on that money? And when am I going to get that money back? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we have time for one more question. Right, is it?
Considering the current economic landscape, do you think that flipping homes offers a wide enough profit margin to be able to make a profit?
In the current landscape, does flipping homes produce a good income? Okay. You have to know what you're doing. You can make money flipping houses in any market. You make money on the buy. When you're buying a property, you have to know what your exit is. So the way we do it is, when you're buying a property to flip, you have to know what is the value when it's finished, and then you remove what profits you're going to make from that, and then you remove your renovations, and that's the price that you should be buying at. So when we always did it in percentages, we always said, if the after repair value is 100%, then you drop it down to 70 because you need 30%, where 10% is for selling costs, discounts and things like that, paying realtors. And then you want to be making some profit on that so you can share, your investors want to make some money. And then you got your renovation. So you may be paying well, 40 to 50% of the actual end of sale price, depending on what your renovation budget. And you need to be very good at what the renovation is as well, because of all the hidden things that come across. If you think you can just put a coat of paint on and sell it, then you're not going to get the value there from it. So, and remember, it is an active job as well. So you're constantly having to do this to keep earning the money. But people underestimate the time they put into flipping houses as well. You'll put a lot of time in, and if you're going to say, I'll do it myself, work every weekend, every holiday, if you actually went to the end of the year, you say, oh, I've made $20,000. If you worked back and worked out how many hours you put in that, you're probably working less than minimum wage. And people don't really understand that.
So, sorry, Darren, just further to that. So your realtor, you're saying is 10, you broke down those percentages.
Okay, yeah, the 10% for closing is your realtor is going to be 5%,
Yeah.
and then you've got a discount in your property. You're never going to get asking price for it unless you're in a really strong market where things are going over asking. So you always want to be able to discount the property, and also you have your lawyer fees to pay and your accounting fees to pay on that 10% closing costs as well for yourself. Yeah.
Right, so that's your 10%, your reno, you're putting in roughly 30% is what you're...
Well, let's just say the property is 100,000 that you're going to be selling it for. So therefore you roll back to 70,000 is where you need to be finished your renovation. And then depending on your renovation, so your renovation is going to be 20,000, 30,000. So if it's 20,000, you need to be buying that property for $50,000.
Right.
And don't forget, when your renovation, it's not just what you're going to be doing on the property, it's also your carrying costs. Because while you're carrying it, you're paying the hydro, you're paying the taxes, and also any financing that you have, you are paying the interest on that. And if you're doing flips, it's usually private money, and it's usually around 10 to 12%. And that will eat away at money very, very quickly with that sort of interest rate. You usually do 20, you split it between your investors, 10% each. You go half each. Yeah.
Okay.